Welcome to the Peace Country Historical Society podcast, where we blend community voices with historical expertise and talk about history in the Peace Country. From early settlers to modern trailblazers, we explore how history shapes our lives today. Subscribe to the Peace Country Historical Society podcast, where the past speaks and we listen.
So welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Peace Country Historical Society's podcast. I am Wanda Johnston-Zenner, and I will be co-hosting with fellow member Duff Crerar. We focus on the unique and compelling history of the Peace Country, and what could possibly be more compelling than local resident of DeBolt, who carved out a successful career as a member of the Legislative Assembly of Alberta from 1971 to 1989. Now, during this time in public office, he served in a number of portfolios in the Executive Council of Alberta from 1975 to 1988. So, ladies and gentlemen, from hay bales to ballots, from crops to campaigns, from farm life to politics, please welcome Marv Moore, telling his story his way. Welcome, Marv. Now, if we go right back to the very beginning, Marv, when you were living on a farm in DeBolt, were you interested in politics at all at that time? I know you come from a family, your grandfather, I believe, was interested in politics. Were you interested then, or did this come about at a later date?
Actually, what happened, I was always involved in community activities, and then we lived in an improvement district. There was no local government, so then in about 1965, they formed improvement district advisory councils.
Right.
And I was elected at a community meeting as a member from DeBolt and became chairman of the advisory council. So that went on for about 3 years, and then we had a member of the Department of Municipal Affairs that came to our meetings all the time. And I remember one time I said to him, "I'm getting tired of no action in Edmonton. I'm going to write the Minister of Municipal Affairs." Oh, he said, "You can't do that. Nobody writes to the minister. You have to go through me." I think that was about the time I decided something should change. So that was probably 1967. And then less than 20 years later, I was the Minister of Municipal Affairs. I told that story. And then I gave everybody my home phone number at a public meeting. So,
oh my goodness,
that was the start of my political career, I think. And then I eventually, Social Credit had been in government for 30 years then, and they ran a good government. Ernie Manning was premier for a long time, and then Harry Strome. But I went to the legislature and sat in the gallery and looked down, and everybody was either bald or gray-headed, like I am today. And I said, it's time for a change. So Peter Lougheed was then leader of the Conservative Party, and they elected 6 members in 1966, I believe it was. And then 4 more joined them, 2 by-elections and 2 across the floor.
Mm.
So there's still 4 crossers in those days.
Yep.
So they wound up with 10 members, and I sent him a letter one day and $10 for a membership in the PC party. And I said, send me back a list of the members in the Peace Country. And I got 2 names. One was a guy by the name of Bruce Stilling from Grand Prairie, who just moved here with Shell Oil from Calgary. The other one was Ron Schuster from Falher, who was a druggist who just moved there from Edmonton.
Oh, yes.
So we had a meeting with 3 people, and then it expired from there on.
Oh, for sure. Well, what I find really interesting about your early life too, Marv, though, is here was a young fellow who, along with your brother, you actually had, you started a milk route right in DeBolt.
Yeah, that was years ago. I was 12 years old. We milked 2 cows, and Mother put the milk in square bottles with a paper cap on them, and we delivered it around DeBolt. After school in the wintertime, before school in the summertime. So that was the start of my entrepreneurial work.
Well, absolutely. And so what you and your brother had done that I had read, you saved up enough money to buy one of these auto cycle things?
We bought an auto cycle from T. Eaton Company for $99. And eventually we rode it to school in Grand Prairie
Yes.
in the summertime.
I can't
In
imagine.
those days, we both took 3 years of high school in Grand Prairie, and in those days, mostly in the wintertime at least, we hitchhiked all the time, and everybody'd stop and pick you up in those days, and we'd hitchhike home and back.
Right.
But yeah, and I graduated from grade 12 in 1955. I was only 16 then, but I missed grade 1.
Right.
Oh,
Yes, because your brother was doing correspondence, I understand, and you sat at the same table, and so when you went
Yeah,
into
I
grade
was-
1, you knew it all, and your teacher moved you up.
I
So
was 4 years old, and I sat at the same table taking the same stuff. In those days, Mrs. Matlock was a teacher with 35 kids in 9 grades, and after 2 or 3 days, she said, "How do you know all this stuff?" And I told her, and she said, into grade 2.
that's
I
right.
missed grade 1. But anyway, that was the
Yes.
start of it.
So you graduated at 16, but I have visions of you and your brother on this autocycle going down the Smoky River Hill. To high school in Grand Prairie, like I cannot imagine. Then on the trip back home, one of you would have to get off because it didn't have enough power to get over top of the hill.
Well, actually, it was going into Grand Prairie.
Oh.
The hill was a little steeper, and
Oh.
one of us had to jump off and run behind because it didn't have quite enough power. It was a 98cc motor, they called it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I just can't
Anyway.
imagine. Mind you, the traffic wasn't as bad, back then as it is now. But, and then of course, once you graduated, you had odd jobs here or there, even working on the rigs, or there was some place, was it Thompson Motors, where you worked for 80 cents and,
I got out of high school and worked on the farm, and I thought it'd be nice to live in Grand Prairie for the winter, so I got a job at 80 cents an hour, 8
Yeah.
hours a day, and lived in the Murray Hotel and ate in a restaurant. At the end of the day, I had 50 cents left over, and at Christmas time, I took note of what I'd been doing and decided there wasn't a career, so I
right,
went to work for the Department of Highways cutting brush that winter.
right. And then
At $1.25 an hour and free board and room.
that would have sounded pretty good at that time.
Yeah.
But then you with this business related adventure of owning your own service station. And not only owning it, but deciding to build it as well. At
I'm not
20
exactly
years of
sure why, but I wanted to build a service station in DeBolt on the new highway that had just
Right.
bypassed DeBolt. So I went to Valley View and got a job within a service station there, and the service station was leased to an owner in Whitecourt, and then I just started the 1st of November, and his manager left at Christmas time. And the owner went to Europe on a 2-month holiday, and I wound up managing the place. I'd only been there 2 months. But I told them I worked at Thompson Motors, and they thought, "Oh, that's a pretty good background." They didn't tell them I was greasing cars.
Yeah.
So that's where I met Fran. She was the
right.
bookkeeper there, and she lived downtown. She had to walk a mile uphill to get to the work, and I gave her heck one day about being late for work, and she just sat down on my knee and put her arm around me. We were married a year and a half later.
And also, where you were living when you were young then was very close to the curling rink. So you were an avid curler, I understand. And in fact, I have heard you have being called Mr. Curling.
Well, I curled a lot. In my young days, there was no skating rink in DeBolt at all. And you started curling probably I was 8 years old or something, as soon as you could push a rock down the ice.
Right.
So I learned to curl early, and then of course when I came to Grand Prairie, all the kids in the dorm from the rural areas knew how to curl mostly, because town kids had mostly never curled. But so we had high school teams curling, Taylor and Pearson Carson curling it was called then, and did very well. But
right.
and then later on, I curled a lot in Bondsfields, mostly from 1962 to 70. But then when I was elected to the legislature, I pretty well quit curling because I was gone all the time.
Well, that's right. Absolutely.
It was a good adventure for a long time. I still watch a lot of curling, and I coached high school curling for a lot of years, even when I was in government, I coached the boys at home on the girls'
Yes, yes.
And then you shifted to shoving other kinds of rocks around.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, that would be one way of putting it, that's for sure. But when you were on the advisory board to the municipal affairs, you certainly looked after the little area, little hamlet of DeBolt. You saw to it that there's a water well was drilled there, and that the streets became oiled. So you were always
I tried to do a lot of things, but it was very difficult to get much done because you had to go through so many people, and then eventually got an answer from Edmonton that said we can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I got involved in political office. I thought we needed some changes.
So did you still have the service station then, Marv, when you entered into politics?
Yeah, actually, I ran a service station in DeBolt for 10 years, and I said to my wife, I'm tired of people. They're no longer, my customers are no longer always right. So I want to farm, and I'll go to the back 40 and never talk to anybody again for the rest of my life. But what I found out was that I was actually tired of fixing tires and pumping gas.
That's right, yes.
I wasn't tired of people so much. Because obviously 3 years later I was running for political office.
Right, right.
So I met with a lot of people. But so I owned the station for another 15 years, I think. And
oh, yes.
had it leased out and eventually sold it.
Mm.
It's still operating today.
I was going to ask
Yeah.
that.
Same building, been built onto twice.
Yes.
The little house is beside it I built in 1962, 3 years after the service station. So
Yes,
our
and
family was growing then. We had 3 children then, Lonnie, Carrie, Lonnie, and Bernice.
And,
all in their 60s now.
Bernice too? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I think one thing we did skip over here though, Marv, is the name of the hamlet of DeBolt. Now, do you want to just tell us how that...
My grandfather, Albert DeBolt, homesteaded there with his wife, Laura. She was a Bickle, actually, in 1919. And then a bunch of other families moved in there very close to the same time. All came from Washington State.
Mm-hmm.
And so 4 years later, they wanted a post office because the community grew, and Grandpa DeBolt wrote to Ottawa and wanted to name the post office. He wanted to have a post office and call it American Creek.
Mm.
But Ottawa didn't like the name American Creek very well, so they decided to call it after him, DeBolt. And that's how it got its name.
Right, right.
He didn't request it, but they said, we'll call it DeBolt. You're the first postmaster.
Good for them.
So,
Good, yeah, you're the first postmaster. They're good for them.
Yes.
And then he lived there from 1919 to 42, and he was a land surveyor, among other things. He was working a lot in the Spirit River area. Got to know a lot of people there, and he wound up running for election as an MLA in Spirit River in 1941 or 2.
Mm.
And then he said if he was elected, he'd move there, so he did. He moved to Spirit River and spent 12 years in the legislature, and then retired from there.
Well, I'm always interested where these small little hamlets get their name from, and it is so interesting too. I find, Marv, how the Moore family, the DeBolt family, and the Bickle family all intertwined. All names that everybody has heard of, but often they don't have the connection to you. So I find it very interesting. So now we're just going to hit the ground running and get into your political life, and we'll let Duff here ask a few questions.
So the first thing I think of is when somebody offers you or invites you into politics, what's your first thought?
The answer to the question is nobody invited me into politics.
Okay.
I decided all on my own I wanted to run, and it just happened. I explained it earlier. I was on an advisory committee, and I thought the social credit government was just getting too old.
Yeah. So you're impatient, lack of change. You were ambitious, you wanted to see things happen, and you were going to do it if nobody else would. And the next thing you know, like many Albertans who get into politics, you're in the flow. And you start small with very few followers, but you seem to somehow earn the confidence of a lot of people.
What happened was the 3 of us met, Bruce Stilling and Ron Schuster and I, and then, we expanded from there. There was still lots of conservative-leaning people in Grand Prairie and elsewhere. And at that time, I was going to run in Grand Prairie because the boundary from Grand Prairie constituency went clear to Valley View, and then Peter Lougheed knew I was going to run and was supporting me, and so was Hugh Horner. And Horner was a member of the Redistribution Committee, which is on right now. And they changed the boundaries to go to the Smoky River. So I was all of a sudden in a constituency that served all the French-Canadian territory up there, and I didn't know a soul up there. I phoned Horner and said, "What you've done, you put me in this other constituency." "Well, some people don't think you can win in Grand Prairie, and we know you can win out there."
Oh, there you
So I had to
go.
go north and introduce myself to a lot of French-Canadian people. I found an old farmer there. He wasn't so old either, just 10 years older than me. And John Langer was his name, and he was a strong Liberal supporter. I met with him in his home, and I spent 2 hours there, and when I left, he said, "I'll go to work for you."
There you go. Yeah.
So that started my career up there, and so him and I spent the whole winter going door to door. And in the winter time when you're meeting people you've never seen before, if you can do 3 families in the morning and 4 in the afternoon, you're very lucky.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
it took a long time to get through there. And then, it was only 2 years later in June of 1970, we had the nomination convention, and by then Peter Lougheed was pretty well known, and there was a lot of interest in the PC party because there was a lot of thought that they might win the next election. So there was 2 guys ran against me. One guy from McLennan, Larry Lamoureux, and another guy from the Guy area that ran against me, and they were both French Canadians. And there was just under 800 people at the nomination meeting. And I had supporters from DeBolt and Valley View and Sturgeon Lake. And when the first vote was held, I had 268 votes, and each of the other guys had 260. So they had to have a second vote, and one guy lost 8 votes. And so the runoff was between me and Louis Tokash from Guy. And Lamoureux lost out, but during the lead up to that meeting, I'd stop and see them once every couple of weeks and have a visit and tell them what good guys they were. And they wound up fighting with one another.
Oh,
dear.
really?
So when the one guy lost out, his name was Lamoureux, his supporters tore the back off his name and made an O out of a U, and it spelled Moore. And I didn't have any signs, but then for the last vote I had signs all over the place that were made with lipstick by tearing 2 ends off of Lamoureux.
Yeah.
And I won with a pretty good majority there, so that was the start of my political
Yeah.
career.
Green grass politics, eh?
Yeah.
Lipstick and cardboard. Yeah. It didn't end in a fist fight, though, just a shouting match, right?
Those were the starting blocks. Then we had the election, and that was something else. Grant Notley was a member, NDP candidate in Spirit River area. I joined him next door in Smoky River, they called it. And I think there was only one guy who had less percentage of vote than I did, and that was Grant Notley. He had like 33.5% of the vote, and I had 33.9% of the vote.
Oh, for
Gee,
heaven's
that's so
sake.
tight. Yeah.
So
Wow.
we both got elected, and Grant Notley was a really good guy. I admired his work. He was unfortunately died in a plane crash later
Yes.
on.
Yes.
But that was the start of my career in politics, yeah.
So, what was the legislature like in those days? Was it a lot of young guys coming in, or was it old guys telling young guys what to do, or?
It's interesting. Lougheed interviewed everybody after the first election we were sworn in, and he was premier. And he said to me, I don't have room for you in cabinet this time, but I've told everybody that there'll be nobody in my cabinet over 50 years of age.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Well, he had to eat those words later on,
Yeah.
of course, because he became 50.
Yeah, that's right.
But that was the start of, and then, so I was a backbencher for the first 4 years, and I worked a lot with Hugh Horner, who was Deputy Premier Minister of Agriculture. He taught me the reins. He taught me a lot of things. He said, if you want to get something done, just do it, and if it's wrong, you ask for forgiveness later.
Yeah.
Get it done. So that was a nice start to my political career working with
Yeah.
him.
But that was your gateway into agriculture then, as minister.
It was. We got paid very little in those days, and you drove your own car and everything else. So after the first term, Lougheed met with everybody, and he had dinner with me, and I said, I'm not going to run again. He said, you're not going to run? I said, I can't afford to run. I got
Right.
3 kids at home, and this is, taken very costly. That was 6 o'clock at night or something, and the next morning at 7 o'clock, my phone rang, and I was in my office already. I was in early. It was Hugh Horner. He said, come down here. I want to see you. So I went down there and said, what's this about you not running again? Well, he did already talk to him because he knew Horner and I were good friends. And Horner said to me, you're going to be Minister of Agriculture. The Premier doesn't want to make any commitments to you, but I'll make sure it happens, he said.
There you go. Yeah.
And it did happen. I became Minister of Agriculture. And then it wasn't too many years later, Hugh Horner left, I think it was 1978. He resigned and went to Winnipeg to be with the Grain Commission. So,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
and then I all of a sudden became the senior rural minister in the cabinet, and which made a big change in my life, because then I was on the Finance and Priorities Committee, and over those years, Lougheed gave me every hard job there was for a long time. So.
Well, he wanted to make sure the job got done, Marv. That's
Well,
why
I
he gave
worked
it to
hard
you.
at it, and
You did.
The first thing in agriculture, when I went in there, Horner had done a whole bunch of things, started all kinds of alfalfa plants and lamb plants and you name it, and half of them were in financial trouble, and I had the job of trying to bail them out or shut them down or whatever, eh?
Right.
So I go to Priorities Committee every 2 or 3 weeks with another problem. I remember the Premier saying to me one time, how many of these problems you had? I said, I started with 13. And he looked at me and he said, do I need to know about them? And I said, no.
That's right. Yeah.
Because you don't want the Premier to be loaded with a whole
Yeah,
bunch
yeah,
of stuff that was...
yeah.
No.
So anyway, but I got them all fixed, and then my second portfolio, I wanted transportation, because transportation's a wonderful job. You build roads, everybody's happy.
Right.
But he wanted me in municipal affairs. And,
Right. Well, there was something to do with annexing
I
some
said, why
land.
municipal affairs? He said, well, see, Spurvis, the mayor of Edmonton, has just applied to the local authorities board to annex Sherwood Park, Spruce Grove, a whole bunch of area around Edmonton. And I can't have an Edmonton MLA deal with that. I can't have a Calgary MLA
Right.
deal
Yeah.
with that.
Right.
So it's you. So I had to deal with that, and that was it took a long time, but I got it done. It took me 2 years pretty well. I had to change the Local Authorities Board Act. At that time, the Local Authorities Board made the decision. It was final, so I changed it. So their decisions had to go to cabinet
Okay.
for approval.
Right. Yeah.
I got that done, and they gave Edmonton a little bit of refinery road, some more tax room and stuff, and everybody was happy at the end of the day, except for the mayor of Edmonton. But anyway, that was
Yeah.
beside the point.
You see, I remember when I was in high school back in Ontario, there was a lot of attention paid to Sherwood Park because it had an Atomic Energy Commission offices and laboratories there. So we knew about Sherwood Park becoming part of Edmonton probably before most other people in the East did, because we had that pipeline of information.
Yeah.
Right.
And Canada was so proud of its reactors, but everyone said, don't forget Sherwood Park. So I still remember it from those days.
Well, maybe we could just touch on some of the highlights too. For example, Marv, the Queen's visit in 19.
Oh, that was nice. Yeah, I was
78,
Minister
yes.
of Agriculture then,
Yes.
so I wound up being the senior minister from the peace country. So when Queen Elizabeth, she came to turn the sod on the QE2 hospital, which is still, the building's still standing and well used there today. And because I was a senior minister, I was invited to, they held a luncheon in the college
Yes.
here. And it was actually sponsored by the Legion and some other branches. And
Right.
so I was invited to propose a toast to her. So that's the shortest speech I ever made and the longest one I ever worked on.
Yes.
And then on top of my writing the speech, Ottawa wanted a copy of it ahead of time. And I said, no, I haven't got it finished yet.
Yes.
So I wrote the speech out in full. And then I put some notes on the back of a business card in my hand so I could refer to them if I needed. Put it in my
Right.
pocket, and then I made the toast without notes or anything.
Yeah, you forgot.
So then her private secretary, after they went back to London, wrote her phone and wanted a copy of my speech, and
Right.
we didn't have a copy. So the secretary to the college president was a girl from DeBolt, and I knew her, and I phoned her and said, I got this problem. I know about what I said, but I don't know exactly what I said.
Right.
You weren't supposed to record or film the Queen while she was eating. But she said, we just happened to record that.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
So she sent me a copy of the recording, and we sent it over to the Queen's office there, and her secretary sent me a nice note back. They
Yes,
appreciated it.
absolutely. You know, and it came from Balmoral
Yeah.
Castle,
Right.
September the 4th of
He
1978.
told me on the phone that the Queen said it was the nicest toast she had ever heard.
Is that right? Oh,
So that
how
was pretty
wonderful.
good. And I put a copy of it in my book there.
Yeah.
But I
And-
did a little research on that too. I made sure I knew what I was talking about.
Oh, I'm sure you did. And you know, one part of your speech that really struck me too, Marv, and it reads as follows: for others who served our country during the Second World War, the memory goes back to that period of time when Great Britain, led by the spirit of Buckingham Palace, opened their homes to servicemen and women from the Peace
Yeah,
River country.
yeah.
And when you as an individual, in a personal way, contribute to the effort in our defense of our two countries. And I
Yeah.
always think it's something to note as well, Marv, is that the Peace country sent more troops per capita
Yeah.
than anywhere else in the Dominion.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that section certainly was something that I tuned into. So I do believe that was
I
really a welcome
gotta
event
send,
for Grand Prairie.
I gotta send President Trump a note. You know who was the first North American country to declare war on Japan when they attacked Pearl Harbor? Canada.
Oh, really?
It wasn't the U.S., it was Canada.
Oh, you must send that note, Marv.
And that's because the Prime Minister of Canada had the authority to declare war, and the U.S. had to go through
Congress. Yeah.
the Congress and the Senate, and it took them 2 days.
Really?
That we were first.
Yeah, America was really afraid of the war. They were pretty isolationist
Yeah,
until Pearl Harbor kind of goosed them into the war.
that's what happened, yeah.
Yeah.
And another thing that you're really quite well known for as well is Highway 40. So,
Yeah, that was a difficult decision there. Highway 40, or let's say Highway 40, the Forestry Trunk Road, had a group of people, mostly from the Grand Prairie area, going down the highway once a year, promoting a new highway south for 20 years probably. And then finally, when we became government, there was a decision that we needed to build the highway before I was Minister of Transportation. And there was actually 4 routes chosen, but one was way
Right.
far west, and that wasn't considered. But the other routes were crossing this over to the Forestry Trunk Road by Canfor's Bridge, which was south of Grand Prairie.
Okay, right.
You hit the Forestry Road about mile 50, and then went down to Muskegon on to Hinton. And then the second route was going farther down and crossing the Smoky River a lot farther down, coming out at Muskegon and on, and then the third route was going through Grand Cache. And I was in favor of the route that crossed the Smoky River where the Canfor Bridge is and hit the forestry road. And I thought then we eventually get the forestry road upgraded and paved so you could go from Goodwin down and hit the road. And Grand Cache, of course, wanted to go through there. But the big lobby was from the city of Grand Prairie and all the forestry industry people here to go farther down across the Smoky River and come out of Muskegon. So there was a huge argument about that, and the city of Grand Prairie and a lot of the Chamber of Commerce and everybody was upset with me because I didn't support that route. And then I wanted to be Minister of Transportation. I thought my chances are not very good when... But Lougheed called me in after the election. He said, I want you to be Minister of Transportation. And he said, I want you to pick a route for Highway 40 and get it built.
That's right.
He said, it's your job. Well, by then, McIntyre Porcupine announced they're closing the mine in Grand Cache. And Grand Cache was going to be a ghost town. Well, we decided to put the sawmill in there and allocate the timber for them. And we built the jail there, too. But if the highway didn't go through there, it was going to be really bad for Grand Cache. So I got a committee of MLAs, including the ones involved in the region, to have a look at it, recommended to them that we go through Grand Cache, and I sort of had to change my spots from being the MLA for Smoky River to being the Minister of Transportation for Alberta.
Yes.
And I got approval to go through Grand Cache from the Finance and Priorities Committee of Cabinet, and then I got $140 million to build it.
Right.
And then we had our engineers do the design, and it came in a lot higher because they wanted to cut the mountains all down and go straight. But we went back and the drawing board and looked at it again and got it down in price so we could do it for what we did. And I got it built within 3 years pretty well as far as the mine. And the road was built from the mine to Grand Cache and just oiled the base. So it was pretty good. But we never did get it paved for a long time because when Getty come in after that, he gave the job to Don Getty, he gave the job to Boomer Adair from Peace River.
Right.
And Peace River never liked what happened in the south part of the Peace, so the paving project was put on hold for about 8 years until Ralph Klein became premier. Then we finally got it done.
One thing I thought was interesting too, the Forestry Trunk Road was designated a secondary highway so at that time, so the province would be responsible for its upkeep.
Well, I designated it as a secondary highway when I was Minister of Transportation because I thought it would then get more attention in terms of being rebuilt and paved. But the MD of Greenview was offered a couple of $1 million to take it back and turn it into a secondary road with their responsibility, and they agreed to that, which was a very poor decision. So
I'm sure some of them may have regretted
anyway, that's
that
what
decision.
happened.
Yeah, I remember driving the unpaved Highway 40. And we
Yeah.
had just moved here a couple of years earlier, and all the people were saying that will be your adventure for the summer. Unpaved, and it was a bit of an adventure, but growing up in eastern Ontario, which was not always well serviced either, it wasn't that unnatural, but lots of wildlife.
Yes.
And they run on the road to come and visit you,
Right.
see how you're doing, check out your car.
Yeah.
We got to the other end, and they couldn't find the back of our car, it was covered. But then paving it, it was like, what happened here, and it became a main route for Jasper. And today it's heavily used and is now envisaged as part of the Great Corridor to the Alaska Highway.
When I was trying to get the department to agree to building it, the planners there said there will never be enough traffic on that or the road warrant to build it. But at that time we didn't know that the oil and gas industry was going to explode down there and all the things that have happened since. And of course, now it's 4-lane part away and a lot of passing lanes, so it's a very busy road.
Well, that's right. In 2025, there was an average of 4,300 vehicles a day on that highway, a highway that they didn't think would be busy.
The problem is, not only are that many vehicles, it's not bad for a 2-lane road, but a lot of them were trucks and a lot of hills.
Yeah.
And the traffic was always, like my two sons worked out there for years, and they said, you have to get across the Wapiti Ridge by 5 in the morning or you never make it to work.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So there was a period of about 3 hours in the morning and 3 at night where the traffic was real heavy.
Yes, I bet. Yes, absolutely. But it is finally done. And one thing that you just left out of your story there, Marv, is that there's a campground in Grand Cache that's named after you.
Well, Grand Cache, you know, they thought the highway was going to bypass them for years, and when I announced that it was going to go through Grand Cache, they were so happy.
Yes.
After I left transportation, they had a big gathering there to celebrate the highway, and that's when they named the campground after me.
Yes, I understand that they had the big sign was actually in one of the school gyms, and then they opened the doors for you to see it, that you hadn't seen it at all before.
But then
that.
a few years ago, they took the sign down and renamed the campground, so they thought I'd passed away.
Oh, dear.
Well, there's been some that I've been speaking to, Marvin, and they think it would be a good idea to get your name back on that sign. So we'll see what happens here. Now, I think maybe perhaps at this point, I would just like to throw in a quote that I received from Tom Burton, who is the Deputy Reeve for the MD of Greenview.
Okay, yeah.
And let's see what he has to say about Marv. So he says, Mr. Marv Moore, over the years has been an advocate for Dibolt, the Peace Country, and the province of Alberta, and in Canada. Over the many years he served in provincial government. Now, Mr. Marvin Moore has always supported his home community in many ways, providing financial contributions, serving on boards, or providing advice to many residents. So Mr. Marv Moore has been a mentor to myself in the many years I have served in the municipal government. And what I thought was so interesting too, it was always Mr. Marv Moore, that term of respect, Marv.
Thank you for tuning in to the PCHS Podcast. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you are notified when we release new episodes. To learn more about the Peace Country Historical Society, visit our website, pch-hs.ca.